Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar organized by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology to celebrate bird migration. My name is Osvel Hinojosa, and I'm the director of the Coastal Solutions Fellows Program here at the lab. And today we're going to talk about our efforts to protect shorebirds along the Pacific Flyway in Latin America. But first, a few announcements. Closed captioning is available. If you like to see subtitles, please click the captions button at the bottom of your screen. And we are streaming live to both Zoom and Facebook. If you're watching on Cornell's Lab's Facebook page, please be aware that there have been some spam attempts in the comments. So please do not click on any links in the comments unless they are posted by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. We're going to start with presentations from our Coastal Solutions Fellows, but we also want to answer questions from the audience. If you're watching on Zoom, you can click on the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen and type your question into the Q&A window. If you see a question already typed in that you like, please upvote that question by clicking the thumbs up icon. We'll be answering some questions verbally, and for others, we'll be typing in our answers, which you'll be able to see in the answered column. If you're having technical problems with Zoom, please use the Zoom chat window for tech help, not the Q&A. Please use the Q&A for content questions and chat for everything else. If you're watching on Facebook, you can add your questions to the comments, and my colleagues will share those questions with us. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. And so I will start with a presentation about the Coastal Solutions program. And I'll start now by talking about the decline of birds that we have experienced in the last 50 years. We have lost 2.9 billion birds in our lifetimes. And one of the groups that have suffered the most are shorebirds. We have lost 37% of shorebirds in North America in the last 50 years. And as you probably know, these birds, they breed in North America, but they migrate to Mexico, Central and South America during the winter. So they need a network of sites during their lifetime to be able to survive. And as you can see in this image, that shows the abundance of the Western sandpiper through the year. During the breeding season, they use a large area in the United States and Canada and Alaska. But in winter, they concentrate in very few places along the coast. So it's really critical to protect all of these sites along the flyway. And in these migrations, they face a number of threats. There is coastal development, urban development, industry, aquaculture, pollution. So we really need to address these issues working with multiple stakeholders. And when we have been planning these efforts at a continental scale, we have been talking with shorebird experts and ecologists and biologists, but we also have been involving architects and engineers, planners and developers. And different challenges have been identified, but one of the biggest challenges is that something that happens very common in conservation biology. We have the scientists, biologists, conservationists working on one silo in academia and NGOs. And then we have the architects, civil engineers, the planners and developers working in the private sector. And there's really no connection or conversation happening between these two sectors. So one of the strategies that we have developed is creating the mechanism and the space for these two sectors to collaborate, exchange ideas, and find solutions for coastal conservation, but also to cultivate, to develop early career leaders that can understand both sectors and use the knowledge and tools from these different disciplines to do effective coastal conservation. And this is how in 2018, the Coastal Solution Fellows Program was initiated as a joint effort between the Packard Foundation and the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And our ultimate goal is to improve coastal resiliency along the Pacific Flyway of Latin America by fostering cross-sectoral and multidisciplinary collaborations, but also by capacity building of early career leaders. And we see this as a cultivation of emerging leaders. Now, this is a unique opportunity to leverage scientific knowledge with advances in engineering and design for effective coastal conservation. And one of the great things of having this fellowship at Cornell University is that, of course, we have all of the amazing resources at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, but we can also use other resources at other great departments. For example, the Department of Landscape Architecture, Civil and Environmental Engineering, the Atkinson Center. So we have a lot of things to offer to our fellows and partners. And we have 6 fellows every year, but they also come with a team of mentors and collaborators and partners. And the fellows, they come to Cornell for training and participate in other workshops for career development and capacity building, but they are working in their countries on their side implementing their projects. So we also think about the network that we are building. Also in the next 5 years, we expect to have over 150 leaders and experts from different sectors and disciplines participating in this program. And so this is our class of 2019. So this is a very young program. We only have 2 cohorts. And this is our class of 2020. So we have fellows right now from Mexico, Guatemala, Colombia, and Chile. And we have a combination of architects, engineers, biologists, and natural resource managers. Although every one of the fellows has cross-sectoral collaborations in their projects. So, and today we're going to have presentations from Varinia Sagastume, Johan Delgado, and Flavio Sarafia. They're going to talk about their projects and what they're doing in each of their countries. If you want to learn more about that program, you can visit our website. It's posted there. You can send us a message and we'll be happy to respond to any questions. And now I'm going to turn it over to Varinia Sagastume. She's our fellow from the cohort of 2020. Varinia is a Guatemalan biologist with a master's degree in wildlife conservation and management. Since January of 2019, she has been working with the Wildlife Conservation Society in Guatemala, where she has coordinated shorebird conservation and monitoring efforts. So Varinia, please.
Thank you, Osvel, and thank you everyone for being here today. My Coastal Solutions project is with salt and shrimp production in Guatemala. So, as you all might know, aquaculture is one of the main threats to shorebirds along the Pacific Flyway. And a good example of how we have been losing habitats and we have seen the modification of coastal wetlands is the Zipacate Naranjo National Park in Guatemala. This national park is very important for biodiversity, but it's also a place with a lot of salt production. So as you can see in this picture, we can see how habitat for shorebirds has been modified and many intertidal mudflats are getting lost because of the expansion of the salt production. So as this is a good example of how the important habitats for shorebirds are being reduced in our wetlands here in Guatemala. And another threat is aquaculture and shrimp production. And in Guatemala, the main issue is that we are seeing changes in management practices. So we can see how many farms are turning from a semi-intensive system to more intensive or even hyper-intensive systems. So the main difference between the systems are yield. You will get more shrimp from an intensive and a hyper-intensive farm. You need more water in a semi-intensive system because you need to constantly pump water in the ponds. And the intensive systems cover the ponds with plastic so you can keep water longer. But the problem with plastic is that they also cover the ground. So many shorebirds won't be able to access to the ground to feed. So as you might see, the potential as habitat is higher for semi-intensive system compared to a more intensive system, but the trends of aquaculture in Guatemala and other countries in Central America is to go to more intensive practices. However, some interesting thing is that during 2019, we did shorebird counts along the whole Pacific Flyway of Guatemala, and we surveyed in 46 sites. And as you can see in this map, we covered the whole Pacific coast of Guatemala. And it was very interesting to see that 1/3, so 32% of the sites that we surveyed were actually shrimp and salt farms. So even though they are a threat to natural habitats, they are also becoming an alternative habitat for shorebirds. So shorebirds are actually using these sites, and we can find them using them as feeding grounds or for roosting, or some species are even breeding in shrimp and salt farms. So the question here is, we have on one side the shorebirds that need these natural habitats and also these artificial habitats that are available now because of the modification and the loss of natural habitats. They are now using these artificial habitats as an alternative. So they need these places to survive migration. And on the other side, we have shrimp and salt industry. So the question is there a way to find harmony between them? Is there a way to make them both work together? And the solution that I propose for this problem is to have best management practices. This is because not all farms have good practices that will benefit birds. So if we work together with the producers and the farmers, we can make these farms more shorebird friendly so that they will have better conditions and better habitat for shorebirds. So the objective of my project is to improve the availability and quality of habitats for shorebirds through better practices for salt and shrimp production. And the objectives are to quantify shorebird abundance and habitat use during the production seasons, develop a management plan for shorebird conservation, and build capacities to reach agreement for implementation and monitoring with the farmers. So for the first objective, I will be doing shorebird counts in a salt farm and a shrimp farm to see how shorebirds are using these artificial habitats. And I will also explore the connectivity between the farms and the intertidal natural habitats that are nearby. For the management plan, I will put together information from papers and publication, also work together with collaborators that are also working with shorebirds and shrimp and salt farms, and use the data I get from the field to make a proposal of which practices might be good for shorebirds. But the most important component of the management plan is understanding the needs and what is important for the workers, for the farmers, and for the producers. So the workshops are a very important part of understanding what they are willing to do or what they're willing to change and why. So we have been proposing some ideas of what we could start doing or changing and improving in these farms. we can think of infrastructure, which are, for example, the walls and the ponds that they have in their farms. So how can we make them better for shorebirds? Is there a way to take plastic away from some ponds or during some important time of the year when shorebirds are migrating? Management is also very important. We need to control vegetation in the walls and also control the water level after harvest. Many shorebirds use the ponds, for example, in shrimp production. After harvesting, the ponds are empty and the ground is wet. So this is the best time for shorebirds to use these artificial habitats. So if the shrimp farmers leaves water at least 3 days, it will really improve and the availability of this artificial habitat for shorebirds. We have also proposed alternative for disturbance. For example, there are places where they hunt birds in the farms. We have found in this picture, you can see a bomb is kind of a firework that they use to make the birds flush so that they can hunt. So controlling the hunting or making routes and temporary closures for places that are important for shorebirds in the farms or during nesting or breeding seasons will help shorebirds in these areas. And also the farms depend on the landscape, depend on the estuary and the natural habitat. So we want to connect the farmer and make them want to protect the natural habitat. And also because they are so connected with the wetland, all the water they use in the farms comes from the estuary. And the water, after using it, goes back to the estuary. So what is the water quality? Can we improve the water quality that will go after to the wetland? And also control pollution and trash that comes from the farms. So after showing them all this and through the workshops, we want to get agreements with them for implementation and monitoring of these practices. And we also need to find incentives for the producers, like bird watching and tourism in their farms, or sustainable standards and certification, market mechanisms, and many other ways that we can make this have a long-term impact. So what I would like to see after I finish my project is have a pilot farm where we can start showing others that we can have these good practices that benefit the producer and benefits the birds, then get a little up and go to local institutions and finally the Pacific coast so that more people and more farms can have these good practices and have these bird-friendly farms. And finally, I would like to thank my team and collaborators that are working together with me in this project. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Varinia. That was great. And thank you, everybody, for the questions that you're sending. We're collecting them, and we're going to, at the end of the presentations, we're going to go through questions and answers from the panelists. And now we're going to have a presentation from Johan Delgado. He's a Coastal Solution Fellow from the cohort of 2019. Johan is a civil engineer with a master's degree in coastal engineering from University of Colombia. And now he's a PhD student in environmental and civil engineering here at Cornell University. He concentrates his research on understanding how natural structures, such as coral reefs and mangrove forests, protect coastal habitats from the harmful effects of extreme weather events. Thank you, Johan.
Thank you, Osvel, for having me. Okay, 1 second here. Okay, thank you, everybody. And today I would like to talk about climate change and this relation with shorebirds and some processes in the Pacific coast. So our project takes place in a small island close Punta Soldado. It is in the Pacific coast of Colombia, and it's close to Buenaventura. This city has the main port and concentrates part of the development of Colombia, especially in transportation of goods, like importation of exportations. So we decided to start this project in this place for different reasons. Like the first one, the island has a critic erosion problem. Like in the last 40 years, like around 600 meters of coastline retreat. Also, there is a small community there called Punta Soldado, and they had 3 relocations in the same period. We know the last one occurred in 1998, but we don't know exactly about the other relocations. Related with the ecosystems, there are a huge loss of beaches, mangroves, and mudflats. They are a critical ecosystem for a critical habitat for shorebirds. And we have some surveys from maybe 20 years ago about we have 5,000 shorebirds. This place is particularly important in this sector, but now we are discovering that this transformation in the habitat loss are changing these numbers a lot. So this is basically this is a summary of all our project, and we are trying to develop a climate smart plan for the island, and at least to do a contribution for this community. So this plan basically starts to explore the hazards that in this case we are concentrated in sea level rise and the nearshore currents. And also we are trying to understand how is the sediment transport and the supply close to the island. There is like this island is close to the estuary, and we have a lot of inputs of sediment in this area. And the next step is like to evaluate the vulnerability and the risk. But in this case, it is not only for the community. We are including also the ecosystems and the land. In the last picture, you can see like the island is large, but basically the island is a wetland. We have a lot of mangroves in this area, but it's just like a small piece of the island is like this solid land. It's a place where the community can live and the shorebirds can rest also. Then we are trying to identify potential solutions for adaptation. We are exploring that nature-based solutions, but we know that for the future, in a long term, we have to plan a relocation, especially for the community, and to identify more places for the habitat of the shorebirds. With this information, we want to basically like to create a conversation with the authorities to prioritize and to plan new strategies. But this is, for me, this is the highest part of this project. In this part, we have different stakeholders, we have different policies in different levels, and also is the moment when we will need like to find funding and to have enough technical capacity to develop the projects. And finally, when we have everything together, we can like take action. We can develop new strategies for adaptation and to create a better conservation in this area. Our first step was to create a good team to work there. As you can see, we have different disciplines in this project. We have social science, we have environmental science, but also we have to articulate all this knowledge and to produce results and then contribute to the policies. This is a challenge that we have in this project, but this is like the way we are organizing our team. This team belongs to different institutions, especially from the National University, the NGO Calidris, the University of Antioquia, and an NGO, research center in Colombia, CEMARIN, that they are helping us to articulate all the research. So some of the results that you can see here in this slide are related more with the physical processes. Here in this picture, you can see the sea level variation in the last decades. It is like when we start this project, we talk a lot climate change and how this long-term trend of sea level rise will affect the ecosystems. But now we are realizing that the occurrence of El Niño, the ENSO processes, are affecting more than climate change or more than this long trend. So we have during El Niño events up to 40 centimeters, and this is like making a comparison with the climate change scenarios. Is like to be in the future. It's like to be in 2050. So we have here the description of what is happening in one of these events. Like we found like the wave direction, the wave that are coming close to the island and changing the direction during these events, and small changes in the wave heights offshore can be like higher wave heights near shore. And we are using numerical models to establish these relations and to be conscious what is happening during these climate scenarios. So understanding all this information, we are describing what is the change in the morphology of the island and how this habitat for the shorebirds is changing during this period. Also, we have some ongoing results. We are planning with this information to create a pilot adaptation solution. It will be basically a wood barrier. We want to protect the coastal vegetation in this part of the island. We are having a recovery. We want to protect this vegetation, and then like sometime we can create a new area with reforestation. So this is a huge challenge. We want to start with a pilot test, but also the importance of this part is the participation of the community. It is not only to go there and put this infrastructure. It's just like to involve the community in the process of adaptation and conservation. So one of the benefits are the socioeconomic. We will need people to develop this test, and we are creating some employment in this area. Also, with the capacitation, we are including people in the conservation processes. And they are more awareness of the situation related with conservation and climate adaptation at the same time. With this test, we want basically to buy time, to have enough time to plan a relocation for the future. We are avoiding to move all these people to another place with more social problems, and we will have the experience for higher infrastructure or higher developments in this area. So this information more related with shorebirds, it is not it's not our expectation, but yeah, but this is the factual information. Like 3 decades ago, we have like 5,000 shorebirds in the area, but now in the last surveys, we have just like 600. What is happening? This is, in my opinion, this is a combination of hazards. So we are exploring in this moment like this relation with climate change, but also there is anthropogenic impacts in the area. Like as an example, like one hydroelectric dam in the area discharged tons of mud, and all this sediment covered the estuary, and in this moment we don't know what is the consequence of this act, and what is the consequence on the shorebirds, on shorebirds ecosystems. And also we have problems with pollution and the interaction with the coastal development in this area. Our project is trying to have impact in the policies from the state scale to the site scale. So we want basically to answer this question is like how can these research results contribute with climate adaptation of Punta Soldado, and later to use these results to contribute to the city, like the city's policies. So we are establishing like a governance framework for this project. We are acting basically as creating like synergy between all the stakeholders in the area that include universities, NGOs, research centers, and community also, and private sector. So in this moment, we are working very well in this part, but the most difficult part is like to get this good interaction with the government, especially to impact the environmental policies and to get funding to develop these climate adaptation projects. So also we are making some efforts trying to communicate what is happening in the area, and we are using different strategies from podcasts to scientific illustration. And we have some information in the news, and we publish a video on YouTube. You can share the video and see more information about this project. And yeah, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Johan. That was great. Again, thank you for the questions, and we'll have one more presentation, and then we'll get to questions and answers. And so now we're going to turn the attention to Flavio Ciarafia. He's a Coastal Solutions Fellow from the cohort of 2020. Flavio is an architect with a master's in urban projects and a master's in landscape architecture from Harvard University School of Design. He's the director at GeoAdaptive in Chile, a global consulting firm that provides advanced intelligence services to generate positive impacts in territories, communities, and organizations. So Flavio, please go ahead.
Right, thank you, Osvel. Can you see my screen, right?
Yes.
Great, thanks for the invitation to present. So my project title, the short title is Valdivia Wetland City, and in a short sentence, the project is about conserving wetlands in dense urban areas in cities that are located in estuarine and coastal systems in Chile. So what is the project about? Basically what the project is it seeks to implement a wetland conservation model that focuses on the management of the contributing basin as the main vehicle for the conservation of wetlands, right? So you can see here the city of Valdivia, the project site, and all the basins in the black edge, sub-basins actually, and the water, the freshwater ecosystem that, you know, are within and around the city. Most conservation initiatives tend to focus on the wetland, on the water mirror of the wetland and around the wetland, but not on the contributing basin. Why is this important? Because the functioning of wetlands depend on hydrological processes that extend, like I said, to the contributing basin. Most of the time in cities, there is a lack of a framework that allows to manage the hydrological system that is feeding the wetland mosaic. And most importantly, cities alter and modify basic hydrological processes like runoff and infiltration. In the diagram that you see on the right, you can see, for example, that when you have natural cover, runoff is about 10%, and most of the water infiltrates to underground aquifers, around 50%. But when you have urbanized conditions, runoffs tend to be up to 55%, which causes a larger pollutant noding to the water bodies, and infiltration is really low, around 50%, which depletes, of course, underground aquifers. So how can we achieve this, right? Well, of course, by managing the landscape that are within and around the basin, you have to make planning and policy decisions that protect water resources by replicating these hydrological functions that are being impacted. And a way to do this is to use green infrastructure to recover functions, as I mentioned before, runoff, interception by vegetation, infiltration, and water storage. There are a bunch of typologies and different systems of green infrastructure. I won't delve into that right now, but just for you to know, there's a lot of different green infrastructure projects that you can start to implement around the city so that you can restore and improve those hydrological functions. So we have been working with this idea or concept of sponge city, which was coined by the Chinese in 2015, but actually the EPA in the United States have been working with this since the 80s. So it's based on 4 basic principles. The first one is to protect natural systems, basically wetlands, rivers, other water bodies, riparian edges, forested areas, etc. The second one is trying to delay water, basically trying to delay runoff so that you can reduce peak discharge, the amount of water that is running down, reducing at the same time the pollutants loading and also reducing the impacts of potential flooding. The third principle is to retain water in natural system to control pollutants and sediments through processes of phytoremediation or natural remediation by plants. And once you have all these processes, you can finally release the clean water to the different water bodies. What is interesting about this is that in a pre-urban state, so before the city is developed, all of these functions occur naturally. Therefore, you require a planning process to start restoring these hydrological functions. So where are we working? We're working in Valdivia, but at the same time in the entire coastal area, the entire coastal area of Chile. Valdivia is the case study. It's a medium-sized city located in southern Chile. It is sort of like a mesh in this beautiful landscape, wetland mosaic. You can see how these wetland fingers penetrate the city. It's at the confluence of 2 rivers, and it's also part of one of the biodiversity hotspot, the Rainfall Valdivian Forest hotspot. And it's also home of the first Ramsar site, a wetland of importance, in 1981, and I'll explain that later. So a little bit about the site. So you can see that, of course, the city predates 1800, but in 1853, you can see how the city is starting to develop at this river bend, and you have water bodies within the city. You have wetlands that are located inside the city. But of course, this created some health and sanitary issues, and public officials started to drain and fill wetlands. And 50 years later, by the end of that century, you have all the urban footprint already consolidated, right? So wetlands are starting to recede. Another important landmark in the history of Valdivia is that in 1960, it was hit by the largest earthquake ever recorded in the world, 9.5 degrees Richter earthquake. So I won't talk about the destruction that affected the community, but it did have an important impact on the landscape. Because of the movement was so strong, some of the areas around the river sank and some were raised. So water was able to penetrate inland, and it created, I would say, one of the most important and largest wetland systems today in the country, which is the Cruces River wetland system that you can see here in the image in the darker green, and around the Rio Cruces, the Cruces River. And here you have Valdivia, right? So this became actually the wetland, the Ramsar site, the wetland of importance. Of course, I already mentioned this, but when you have urban development, all of these hydrological functions are affected and you need to restore those. So what you have in the end, it is a complex problem of different land uses and land covers competing with each other. And you need to plan for that if you want to conserve wetlands that are important habitats for birds, right? And this is just to sort of like show the city in the context of all the wetlands that are within the urban area in color green. So in terms of goals, the project seeks to first support policy related to urban wetlands, to create a program of knowledge transfer and communication about the importance of this, and also ideally to set up a local implementation in the city, thinking that all of these can be scaled up to a country level, especially the coastal area, of course, that is the area of interest. And we have done quite substantial progress over the last, I would say, 8-9 months already, working with my partner institution, which is the Rio Cruces Wetland Center. There's the logo here. First, we define the minimum sustainability criteria for the bylaws of the Urban Wetland Law, which is a law that was enacted in January 2020 that seeks to protect urban wetland through different instruments. So we did a multi-stakeholder process nationwide. We also got some expert inputs, researched some best practices so that we could set up this sustainability criteria in different categories like monitoring, governance, management, planning, and education and participation. So all of these criteria will be condensed and implemented through a local ordinance in cities that have urban wetlands. So this project was already delivered to the Ministry of Environment, and we're now moving into the phase of implementation. A second project, also with my partner institution in Valdivia, is about developing the guidelines to implement the urban wetland law that I mentioned earlier. So based on that minimum sustainability criteria, we are looking at what type of actions and solutions, such as green infrastructure, could be implemented through the local ordinance. But not only that, we're also looking at different indicators to monitor progress, and also setting up like a model template of ordinance so that the municipalities can start planning for wetland conservation. Finally, and this is an ongoing, I think it's an ongoing project, is about the law implementation for specific cities. So what we're gonna do with the Ministry of Environment is try to characterize and prioritize cities, coastal cities across the country, so to figure out which one are the most important in terms of wetland conservation. After that, we're gonna try to understand what are the knowledge voids in environmental and planning departments in municipalities. And with that, we're gonna create a knowledge transfer program and eventually support cities in protecting wetlands. So it's basically an advisory, support, and implementation project. And here on the left, you can see that we're already starting to work in the city of Valdivia to see what are the wetlands that we want to focus on and how can those be conserved using the instruments that were set up by the Urban Wetland Law. Finally, I just want to mention that this is important, or maybe you're wondering why this is important for conservation. Well, in the case of Chile, which is a really long stretched country from north to south, you have a bunch of large and small coastal wetlands that work as stepping stones for different bird species, including shorebirds. What is interesting is that these wetlands are not located in pristine areas or protected areas. Are actually happening, or they exist within hybrid landscape that have agriculture uses, forestry activities, different gradients of urbanization, etc. So in a sentence, if you want to conserve wetlands habitat for birds, you need to start focusing on cities. and all of the uses that are happening around them. So I would say that the key aspect of the project is that it will allow us to scale up the implementation of the different strategies to all of these cities that are in the coastal area. Thank you.
Thank you, Flavio. It was a great presentation. Now we're going to go through some of the questions that you have sent. If you have any more questions, please write them in the Q&A box or in the comments in Facebook. And so we'll start right away. So first questions are for Varinia, and it's a combination of things related to salt production. So if you can talk a little bit about what is why salt, why people are producing salt in the coast of Guatemala, and what is the economic importance of salt production in the area? What are the uses of salt, of this salt that is being produced? And I think you covered already, the strategies used to working with farmers, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, just to tell you a little about these questions, I answered some of them in the chat. I hope you can see the answer there. But about the salt production economy, it is not one of the main products for the country, but for some local communities, it is one of the main economic activities. So salt is not as important for the country, but it is very important for local communities, and especially because it is artisanal salt. So it is made in a way that is really traditional for these communities. And that makes that this salt doesn't have like the highest quality for human consumption. So it's mostly used to feed cattle, for a supplement for cattle, and also in the industrial level. And a small part is used for local consumption, for human consumption. And another question I saw is someone asked what kind of incentives we want to implement with the farmers. And we are still looking for what is important for the producers and what they would like to do. So some of the incentives are, for example, tourism and bird watching in the farms, because we have found that many of these shrimp and salt farms, a lot of shorebirds use them during the high tide, when the mudflats are not available for them to feed. They go to the salt farms for roosting or just additional foraging. And it is a great place to watch birds. So a good incentive might be to have tourism, and so that they will have some extra fee for people going to watch birds in their farms. Also, another incentive are certifications and sustainability standards. At least for shrimp production, the shrimp in Guatemala is mostly exported. So if we have certifications for aquaculture that can support shorebird conservation, then it will be an incentive for them to use these practices to get some certifications or to get to some sustainability standards to sell their shrimp to Europe and other countries. And some other things that we're trying to do are some market mechanisms, see how we can incentivize them to sell a product that is shorebird friendly or bird friendly, and to have a better image of their product so that the consumers will be more attracted to them. I believe many of you that are watching now will be interested in buying for example, bird-friendly shrimp or bird-friendly salt. So those are market mechanisms that we can use to incentivize the producers.
Thank you, Varinia. So I have a question for Johan. How is the monitoring of mangroves happening in Colombia, and what has been achieved in terms of mangrove monitoring?
Yeah, well, from our experience, we are developing some surveys in the island. We are identifying the species that we have in the island, and also what is the relation with these mangrove species with the hydrodynamic conditions. I know from other colleagues in different institutions, they are using also remote sensing to identify the area covered by the mangroves. Also, I know there is a database where most of the researchers in Colombia are like collecting all the information, and it is handled by a research institute in Colombia.
And just to continue a little bit with you, Johan, what do you see as the biggest barrier for your work so far?
The biggest barrier, I think, is the interaction with government, because in this moment we have a change in the government, and now we have to start again to work with new employees in these institutions, because basically they are changing in every election. So yeah, we need to include all this information, all this research, to create or to improve these policies that we have in the local scale, and yeah, trying to get a sustainable project for the future. Just like basically we want is that all these initiatives continue during more time after Coastal Solutions program finished.
Thank you. So next is a question more for Flavio, and probably you've seen them, Flavio, in the box, but yeah, it's about the green infrastructure and water gardens in the cities, no? And how effective can they be, and how can we make them work, no, and make a difference at the landscape level?
Yeah, I understand. Thank you, Osvel. So green infrastructure works at different scales, and rain gardens are only a small fraction of the solutions that are out there. When you work at an urban level, you need to understand from where water is coming from, what are the pollutants in the water, and where water is going and where is it concentrating. Based on that, you can set up different strategies, from basic stuff like preventing building over wetlands and preventing polluting water bodies, from different businesses and land uses, to set up specific type of infrastructure to deal with water quality and quantity. So for example, you can have constructed wetlands, you can restore riparian edges. And when you work in a systemic way, when you address the entire urban basin or sub-basin, you can actually have really good impacts in terms of water quality and quantity. In Valdivia, because it is a city that is starting to urbanize in a more densely fashion, we still have the wetland system that is in the city taking care of all of that. But I would say that we're in a sort of like a specific time in which if we don't do anything, the capacity of those wetlands to actually clean water and absorb water will be diminished, and the effects of that will be the pollution of rivers, the pollution of coastal areas, sedimentation, and also flooding. So there are, in terms of successful implementation, there are beautiful cases in China, some places in the United States, like, for example, Seattle, and also Portland, and also green infrastructure can work at larger scales. And I think the most interesting example is what is happening in the Mississippi Basin. So the Mississippi Basin is one of the largest basins in the world. Most of the crops are actually monocrops, like wheat, specific grains, mostly grains actually, and maize. So because agriculture has been done in a way that is unsustainable, they have crops over riparian edges, they have cut forest, etc. So they're having specific water quality issues in upstream towns and states. But not only that, because there is no buffering to for all the nutrients and nitrogen, phosphorus, and fertilizers, and also pesticides as well. All of that pollution is going down the Mississippi Basin and reaching the Gulf of Mexico. And I don't know if you've seen this in the news, but some years you have massive algae bloom that is killing all the local fauna in that area in the ocean. So what's going on that scale is that upstream, the states that are, agricultural states are trying to restore this green infrastructure, basically wetland, water bodies, forested riparian edges. And some of them have done great progress, so they have improved their water quality, which is actually their drinking water. But at the same time, if you scale up to the entire basin, eventually you may have some interesting benefits downstream, basically in the Gulf, avoiding the algae bloom that is killing fish, another type of fauna, right? So I would say that green infrastructure may sound something futile, but it depends on how you address it systemically and how do you try to understand the problem in a way that is not isolated, but actually that try to work with the entire hydrological and ecological system. In this case, in my case, actually it's a city, but of course it has a larger area, a very urban area with agriculture and forestry. So you have also to take care of that. So I would say that maybe answered the question.
Great, thank you. And we're getting to the top of the hour, so I want to close this session by thanking all the panelists. Thank you so much for your participation, and thank you to all of the viewers. And I want to give you just 30 seconds to each of you, to Johan, Flavio, and Varinia, if you want something to add, and especially how do you think your projects are having an impact in your sites and your communities? Do you want to start, Varinia?
Okay. Well, I think my project is very important, not only for Guatemala, but also for Mexico and other Central American countries that are having the same trouble with shrimp and salt production, because these production systems are taking a lot of the wetlands and coastal habitats that shorebirds need during migration. So if we can find this balance and harmony between these production systems and shorebirds, we will be helping them to have alternative habitats and extra places where they can go during their migration. So that is very important. And I think it is work that is not only me, but all our collaborators, colleagues, and biologists that are working in salt and shrimp farms along the whole Pacific Flyway. Even in South America, we have huge salt farms. So it is a work that we're doing together, and I'm just putting a little extra effort in protecting the whole Pacific coast. So that is a little of what I'm working on, and I hope you like my presentation, and I hope you'll see results in the following years. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Johan?
Firstly, thank you everybody for taking this time. In my opinion, this project is creating a synergy between different institutions in Colombia. And maybe this project is only 2 years, but we are expecting to be in the area for a long time. Now, maybe not just like with this project from Coastal Solution, will be with different institutions working in the same area and creating better capacities, not only in the universities, also in the communities and in environmental institutions in the government, trying to continue solving these problems, because it is not just, the climate change is not just until our projections. It will continue for a long time. So we need to be prepared and an experience for the future.
Thank you. Flavio?
Thank you, Osvel. Well, thanks everybody for connecting today. I'm really happy to present the project and the progress so far. Well, I think it's quite interesting what the fellowship has allowed me to do. I would say it's not about the technical aspects per se. It's about connecting with the right people and stakeholders. You know, the fellowship forced me to actually look what is the landscape of institutions and policymakers that are focusing on these issues. And if you connect with them through a common ground or goal, I would say effective change is actually possible. And I think that has been demonstrated by the projects that I showed you. We have been working at the highest level of policymaking, informing the Ministry of Environment on all of the issues related to urban wetlands and conservation of urban wetlands. And this is not because we like urban, of course we like urban wetlands and all type of wetlands, but I would say that it is important mostly for people that are living in these areas. Climate change is hitting us really hard, mostly because of water scarcity, drought. We have been having this drought for the past 12 years. And you know, wetlands are nature's sponges. They collect water, they filter, they clean it, and after that we can use it, not only us, but also you know, different species. So we're coming to a point where the citizenship and society at large is understanding the value of those ecosystems. And the fellowship has allowed me to be positioned in a place that I can actually inform that process in a productive way. Of course, everything needs to hit the ground at some point. Things need to be implemented, and we're not decision makers, but I guess we can nudge them right into the right direction. And I would say that in itself is already a success. So if you happen to be you know, a person interested in this along the Pacific Flyway in Latin America, I think the fellowship is a great place to start working on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you to our panelists. And yeah, if you have any questions, send us an email or visit our website. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.